Look at that, everybody. We're live. Waiting for a minute and a half. I turn around for a second and come back, and of course, we're live. All right, we're going to get right into it tonight because we've already been doing some maintenance here. It's funny to see all the live bears are all huddled up in this one spot. It's probably because it's the most swimming room anywhere in the tank. So we are going to go ahead and get the water switched around. I'm going to start filling it back up. I'll get the glass wiped down, and that's pretty much all we're going to do with this tank tonight. I don't know if we're going to do any other maintenance or not. But while I'm working on that for a minute, let's get the water turned around first. And then I'll worry about, I got to refill my goldfish food container out of the big tub I've got. So you enjoy looking at the pond for a minute. All the fish are down here, but you can enjoy looking at the pond for a minute. And let me get that water flowing back into the tank. I've been draining the tank since 7:15, so about 45 minutes I've been draining that. Now, I do drain this tank a little more slowly because the Siamese algae eater is known to go up inside the gravel vac and get it, basically just wedged up in the top, and he plugs it and stops it from draining. And I'm sure it's not good for the fish either. So when I do a water change on this tank, I sort of wedge the hose under the edge of the thing here, which, restricts how much water can flow. Of course, it crimps pretty tight no matter how I hang it over there. You can see how it's doing it right here. So that's the one thing I don't like about this Vivor brand hose. It's a really thin vinyl hose, and it kinks pretty easily. But in order to keep the fish from swimming up into it, I kind of push it down into the gravel a little bit. You can see the water's flowing in now. We don't have to worry about it anymore, but I keep it down on the bottom like that to prevent the algae eater from getting up in there. And of course that restricts the water flow as it comes out, and then it goes through that little crimped area. And so it takes about 45 minutes to do the draining part of a water change on this tank. All right, so we got a little bit of food left in there. And I've got a bucket down here, dear Liza. And it doesn't have a hole in it, but it does have a lot of goldfish food in it. And so I use this to fill my, I think it's like 4 pounds of it or something when I got it. All right, now we got a full can of food again. All right, let me get this put away, and I will come get caught up on the comments and say hello to everybody. I know we kind of started right out of the gate moving, but I was right at that point where it was time to switch the water over, and I kind of had to do that based on the tank. All right, let me see who we got chatting tonight. Get switched over to all messages. So Zini, Fish Tropic, Robert, Ark, Dade, Chris, Michael, Wind Charge. We'll get to the Grammy tank in a bit. I'm doing well enough. Thank you for asking. So frozen gourami for sale. Yeah, gourami, I don't think it's the kind we typically have in our tanks. I think it's the snakeskin, or it might even be a different gourami, but I'm pretty sure snakeskin gouramis are used as a food fish. Steve. Oh, the goldfish, as you can see, will eat all that food super fast. The Grammies are doing well, and as far as I know, all of my clown plecos are doing well enough, but they are fairly reclusive. I got a bunch of clown plecos, actually. We're going to get over here. Actually, you know what? I've been wanting to do this for a while. We're going to get you guys screwed down here tighter. I need a little blade or something to get up to where it's one of those kind of screws that's got like a little ring that pops down so you can turn it, and then it folds up out of the way so you can actually mount the camera onto the tripod. And I can't get the little ring to pop down with my fingernail. I got to use a blade or something to get up in there to pop that ring down. So that's why I've been unable to do it the last few times I've tried. All right, let me get over there. We'll get that glass wiped down, and then we'll continue on with the normal feeding for the evening. And actually, you know what? Change of plans. We're going to look at the gourami tank for a minute for no particular reason other than I got to go in the other room and get some stuff to wipe the glass down with. I got to cut some polyester batting here. I got to find some polyester batting. There's some polyester batting. Find me a handy dandy pair of scissors. And cut it into little pads. Now I got some polyester batting to do the deed with. So we're going to bring you back over here. And I'm going to start wiping the glass down. All that I just scraped off the glass is just duckweed, so that's going to go right into the pond. And I'm not going to bother wiping down below the leaf line on this end of the tank. For one, not much grows there because of the leaf cover. And for two, so little light gets through there that even if there is some stuff on the glass, it's not like we're really looking in there and seeing anything. So it's easier just to do this. Get off the parts where we can actually see the fish swimming around. I really need to get in here and do some plant removal. Told someone today that I would give them some plants out of my tanks. And I don't know what they want exactly. I was just planning on mixing it up and giving them a little bit of whatever I could give them. But I think one of the things I'm going to give them is some of the crypt out of here. I'm going to try to pull some of that out soon. Supposed to meet up with him sometime next week. So that'll be enough time for me to get in there and get some of that crypt pulled out. And it feels like the water I'm putting in there is a little bit cold compared to the water that's already in there. So I'm going to bump that temperature up just a little bit. I can still feel stuff on the glass. I probably need to get in there at some point with a razor blade and really just clean it. I think that's pretty good though. Now we'll give it a finishing Dan touch. Now it looks like one of my tanks. Oh, I probably should do the deadly Windex on the outside too. The weather was windy as hell today. We were actually under a wind advisory all day, and tomorrow's only supposed to be in the 40s. So if you're in Alaska, the 40s probably sounds warm. Thank you, Michael. I have one tank that has a scratch on the glass, the gourami tank, but that is the only one that has any scratched glass. What I'm using to wipe down the glass is the same polyester batting material that I use for filters. I just cut it into little squares and use that to wipe the glass down. Laura, I wonder if we're going to see you again. Well, first of all, that's not smoke. That's just vapor. And secondly, yeah, it's not hurting anything. Eugene. Dangasm, I don't know about that. JNN, how are you doing? All right, let's continue on with the feeding, since at this point all we're doing is watching a tank fill. We don't need to stand here and watch that, just so long as I pay attention to it. Watch your head. I tell you that every damn time we walk through there. And actually, in this tank, we're going to ugly it up a little bit for the moment. It'll look better after time, but in the meantime, we're going to have to ugly it up because I really want to add some calcium carbonate to this tank. And so we're going to use my poultry grit. And over time, that'll work its way down into the substrate, and I'm going to help it work its way down into the substrate. And you won't be able to see all that ugly white gravel in the back of the tank that looks very unnatural. But I do want to put some carbonates in that tank. I don't think the water's hard enough for those goldfish. And we're going to use some of that flake food that I just got out, and we're going to get that all down into the water column. I don't like my fancy goldfish eating from the surface. And of course, that cloudiness will go away soon enough. That's just a little bit of cloudiness from the crushed coral I put in there. Fancy goldfish are doing okay. Yeah, my gourami tank, once upon a time when it was really a gourami tank, like the gouramis were the focal point, I had a bunch of, you're talking about 9 years ago, I probably still had a bunch of opaline gouramis in there at the time. Shirley. Oh, you had a wedding weekend. I forgot all about that. Yeah, the goldfish are definitely getting bigger. On the shower tank, I was actually thinking about doing a water change, or I wasn't thinking about doing a water change on the shower tank. I was thinking just about water changes. I'm surprised that actually came up. You must have been reading my mind. You're like the amazing Kreskin. What I was thinking about was the fact that I don't really do water changes on that tank in there. It's only got shrimp in it. The last time I did a water change was for the purposes of that experiment where I wanted to get the tannin out of the water and wait and see which tank developed the tannins faster, the tank with only plants and living root system, or the thing I put the wood in. Of course, the wood turned into tea stained water within days, whereas the other tank does have some tannin staining in it, but not much. So it's clearly coming from the wood. I determined that unequivocally. But that was the last time I did an actual water change on that. What I do in that tank occasionally, since the way I fill it up is just by letting it, I got the shower on one of those hoses, and I just let the shower hose flow into the tank until it starts overflowing. And then I just let it overflow for 5 minutes or something. And then that's, if I do a water change, that's what I do. And usually I only do that just to get the mulm and stuff sort of stirred up and off the bottom, and it clears some of that out. I'm not so much worried about the quality of the water. It's just I want to physically get some of that detritus and stuff out of the bottom. Well, I would call it mulm, not detritus. Marble? Who's talking about marble? When you say you backflow them, you mean you just sort of overflow them and let them sort of do a passive water change by letting the current water just flow out as you add new water into it? No, the last time I did that, Art, there was no shrimps in it. That was the other thing I was thinking about, but I decided I wasn't going to bring it up since I've never actually done it. So I've never actually done that method when there were shrimps in there, because I would obviously, I was careful when I did it when I had like those guppies and minnows and stuff swimming around in there, because I would occasionally have a small minnow go over the top. And if I wasn't fast enough, it would go down the drain. And so I stopped doing that when I had a lot of stuff in the tank. All right, let me go turn the spotlight onto this tank too, and it'll highlight how pretty those fish are a little bit more. Let's see. We're going to start with some Tetra color enhancing flakes. Thank you, Dade. And then we're going to put in the good stuff, which is I carry algae wafers. Of course, I break them up into pieces so everybody gets a little bit. Oh, one went in there complete, but we'll let that be in there for the pleco to find. I do have a, last time I measured it, it was just over 12 inches to the tip of the tail, and that was months ago, so it's probably, 12 and a half inches now. They start slowing down once they get larger, and I think this one's approaching its maximum size. I think it said on the box that it was gets up to 15 inches or maybe 18 inches. I still don't know what it actually is. It was just sold as a high-finned spotted pleco from PetSmart over a decade ago. I've had 3 or 4 people tell me names that when I've looked them up, I'm like, yeah, it could totally be that. But I've had 3 or 4 different names come up that, yeah, it could totally be that. So I don't know which one it actually is. So I just call it the high fin spotted pleco. I don't think too much about it. It just is what it is. If I was breeding it or I was going to sell it to somebody and really needed to positively identify it, that'd be a different story, but I don't. Yeah, I like the marbled angelfish too. When I upgrade the goldfish tank, what I'm hoping to get is probably either like a 60 or a 70 gallon tank, something like that. It would have to fit on the dresser that's sitting there. I'm not, moving furniture out of the room and everything to accommodate a new tank and putting a new stand in and whatnot. As it is, I'll have to find a new home for the shrimp tank I have there, because I really like that shrimp tank now that the water's clearing up and you can actually see the plants growing and the shrimp swimming all over the place. It's pretty cool. In fact, tonight I want to do something different. When we get to my other shrimp tank, it's my quarantine tank, but it's all full of shrimp now. Art Night had given me some shrimp lollipops, and I never really use them because in my regular shrimp tank, they just get so covered in snails so quickly that the shrimp can't even really get to it. So I do have a lot of snails in the other tank, but not as many. So I'm going to try to put them in there in a way that I'll try to prop them up so that it'll allow the shrimp to get on them faster than the snails, and we'll see what we get going on with the shrimp lollipops. I don't know what a pico catfish is, but there's a lot of catfish out there that definitely get very large indeed. Turn this light off too. All right. My main focus is that we're still filling this tank. I don't want to lose sight of that. So once the tank is full, I'll be able to chat a little more in a more relaxed manner. Right now, I'm just desperately not trying to lose sight of my tank. What did I want to talk about tonight? Oh, the first thing I need to do, I need to water my dragon's tongue here. So this is what my poor little dragon's tongue looks like at the moment. Very, very sad and droopy. So I'm just going to dunk it in the pond. And then once the plant has stood back up, we're going to trim it tonight because it's getting out of control again. And so it's definitely ready for a haircut. So we'll do that once it perks up a little bit. All right, still filling the tank. For Zany, it is now Monday. It is still 2025, though. I've heard something now. I've heard it since I was a kid, but it's come up 3 times in the last couple days while watching Doctor Who. And has anybody ever heard the idea that it's aerodynamically impossible for bumblebees to fly? But the moral to the story is, of course, bumblebees don't know that. So I guess they try harder or something. I don't know what the fuck is supposed to happen. It's almost Bugs Bunny in the sense, like, you ever see one of those episodes where Bugs Bunny like totally defies gravity, and then says, "Oh well, I never studied law, so the law of gravity doesn't apply to him." It's almost that kind of logic. The idea that a bumblebee just doesn't know it can't fly. It never studied aerodynamics, and so it just tries harder, and so then it can. I've literally heard that as a child from my father, and in the 70s, that was still the general idea. Of course, in the modern times, we've gotten, the super high speed cameras and stuff, and we actually realized that bumblebees fly very differently than we thought they did, and flying the way they do, they obviously can. But I just remember as a kid being told that and thinking like something like, either you don't understand what the word impossible means, or you don't understand what the word impossible means. Like, impossible means they can't do it. It's not a matter of if they just fucking try harder. That's something that's difficult to do, and you have to try harder. If something is impossible to do, they can't fucking do it. And since I can see bumblebees flying around, that's clearly a dumb statement. The idea that bumblebees can't fly, but they don't know that, so they fly anyway. But that's come up 3 times now in the Doctor Who in the last couple of episodes I've watched. So they really like leaning on that point of like, all you got to do is believe in yourself or try harder or something, and you can just defy the laws of physics, apparently. God, people are dumb. It's in the B movie. Okay. That again, that's a common thing to say, that bumblebees aerodynamically it's impossible for them to fly, yet somehow they do it. Well, then it's not fucking impossible. Well, Doctor Who ain't American. What color are my marble angelfish? The typical black, tan, and silver. The panda you're looking at now is just black and white, and if it's under the right lighting, you can see little hints and glistens, shimmers of blues and greens and some other colors in there. It's a really pretty fish, but that one's just black and white. It's a panda. Yeah, that's Arthur Dent learned how to fly. The trick is you have to throw yourself really hard at the ground and miss. All right, we're just going to move on to the next tank. Got a pretty good buzz rocking already tonight. Slowly, the discus in this tank. Here, let me close this flap while it's filling. I'll reduce your glare a little bit. Slowly, the discus in this tank is starting to learn where the food comes from, and it'll start drifting down towards the food end of the tank when I start feeding. But I have been making sure food gets to the other end of the tank, so it gets plenty. And tonight I'm putting in the granules, and they sink pretty quickly, so they'll go all over the tank, and the discus will definitely be able to find some of that in there. Do I have any pest snails? I do not. Now, I do have a lot of snails that other people would call pest snails. I've got a lot of ramshorn snails. I have some pond snails, probably. I don't even know if I still got any pond snails. But I got tons of ramshorn snails. But I don't consider snails a pest. I consider them part of a good, active, healthy ecosystem in a tank. So I like having my snails in my tanks. Am I ever going to do another tank like I did 9 years ago? I don't know what you mean. I mean, most of my tanks by 9 years ago, I was kind of settling into my style of tank. And so I kind of think most of my tanks all, at a casual glance look similar. So I'm not really sure what you mean by, how I did tanks 9 years ago. The only thing I did differently in the past than I do now is in the past, I was a much worse fish keeper. So fish died a lot more frequently, and I had to replace them, and my tanks changed. And, I was still, maybe 9 years ago, I'd kind of gotten through my experimental, kind of trying to find the style I liked. But I still went through fish pretty quickly back in the day, and I used to buy a lot of exotic, expensive fish because I obviously thought I knew more than I did. I'm susceptible to the Dunning-Kruger effect like everybody. And so I learned the hard way that, when it says beginner fish, I should probably stick with beginner fish. But other than that, the only thing I really do differently is I used to keep a native tank sort of always in flux. I was always releasing the fish I'd caught and catching cool new fish and putting them in there. But just over time, I got so much grief about it, and I got so many comments, and I saw other videos from other people where they had police knocking on their door from them releasing fish, and I just decided I'm not doing any of that shit anymore. And if I did, I certainly wouldn't be doing it on camera for everybody to see. So I just kind of faded away from that. But, otherwise, like I said, I don't really know what I was doing differently 9 years ago than I am now. I actually had an incident the other night with my propane space heaters. I was using the flame burning ones rather than the catalytic ones. And of course, the catalytic ones still produce carbon dioxide. None of them, when functioning properly, should be producing carbon monoxide. That wasn't the issue. But I was sitting there in front of one of my flame burning ones, and I could feel and smell the fumes. That's what was keeping me warm was, I could feel the heat coming off of the thing. After a couple of hours of sitting there, my chest was hurting. And like my chest after a while really started hurting. I was beginning to wonder if I was going to go finally meet Elizabeth. And then I got lightheaded and started feeling all shaky. And I was just like, I need fresh air or something. So I shut all the heaters down and walked into the other room. And within like 3 minutes, I felt back to normal. My chest wasn't hurting anymore. My head cleared up. I stopped shaking. And so I was clearly exposing myself to way too much carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide is deadly. If you get that into your bloodstream, removing someone to fresh air is a good idea. It'll stop things from getting worse. But once you've got carbon monoxide in your blood, if it's enough of it, you need a blood transfusion. That's the only way you can get it out of your blood. Carbon dioxide, you can just go out into some fresh air, and within a few minutes, you've blown it all, out of your lungs and gotten it out of your system. And so I think that was what the issue was. I was just slowly exposing myself to so much carbon dioxide So today I sealed up the window and I ran the exhaust pipe from my diesel heater, which actually runs the exhaust fumes outside, and it just blows the warm air into the basement. So I got that set up today, and boy, what a difference. The basement doesn't smell like burning diesel fuel or propane fumes. It's less moist, it's warmer, and I'm just yay. The only downside is I don't have the fan in the window to like blow all the smoke and cat box smell and stuff out of the basement. But you know, in the wintertime, I don't necessarily need a window open with a fan in it anyway. So moist. When propane burns, it actually releases a shit ton of water vapor. Propane contains a lot of water, believe it or not. And so compared to other type fuels, that is the one downside to burning propane. Now, if you use the catalytic heater, that doesn't burn it, and so it doesn't release any water vapor. But if you're actually burning propane, which my other, space heaters do burn it, it just releases a ton of moisture. All right, we're sticking with the flakes, or the crisps rather. Oh, well, I'm glad you enjoyed that gourami tank. I will not, however, be getting another opaline gourami tank. I'm not saying I'll never own another opaline gourami. That's unlikely, but not out of the question. But I'll definitely never be doing another tank with a bunch of opaline gouramis in there. I had nothing but problems with that tank and aggression. I was constantly moving them around, and I would take, the aggressive one out, and I'd buy a new one, and I'd try to put a female in to replace it, and then another one would start being aggressive. And I eventually gave up on the opaline. Any of the 3-spot color morphs of the gouramis can be touch and go. Some of them are pretty chill, others are just complete dicks, and you have no way of knowing until you've got them in your tank for 2 years and they mature, and now you've got an adult sized full grown gourami that's an asshole, and it's just in your tank with all the other ones bullying everybody. So I did that for a long time until I eventually gave up on the 3-spot color morphs, and I settled in with just doing the pearl gouramis here, which actually do get along quite nicely in a group. Now, of course, they're small, and I've got all those other fish, and I got the angelfish and the discus, so you sort of lose sight of why I even call this my gourami tank. But it does have 7 pearl gouramis in there, and this tank has always had gouramis in it ever since I set it up years and years ago. So that's why I still call this my gourami tank. All right, we are coming around the bend on this tank. We got about an inch of water left to go, and that'll be done. Then we're going to do a little bit of work on this. First thing I want to do is get the glass wiped down while the water level is still low. So we're going to do that right now. And then when the hose is done in the discus tank, I'll bring it over here and we'll top this tank off. I'm not going to do a water change on it, but we will get it topped off. So let me grab one of my little pads here. And I'm also going to get in and clean out the filter intake when we're in there. The cyanobacteria has come back with a vengeance after the last time I got in there and tried to clean some of it out. I swear leaving that stuff alone is more often than not your better option. Someone had asked me about a scratch in my glass, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look really closely, right here, you can see a little bit of algae like growing in a line. It's a little bit of hair algae sort of waving back and forth. Looks like 3 clumps of it. That is anchored to the scratch in the glass, and it's always tough to get that fully cleaned out. All right, we're going to switch over to a new pad. And the tank is almost full, but that's all right. We're going to throw the hose in the pond for a little bit too, so I can put the hose in the pond while I'm finishing this up if I don't get it done in time. Watch out, everybody. Here it comes. All right, it's almost up to the rim on the 125, but that's okay. It can go a little bit above that. And I think we're going to hit this tank with the deadly poisonous Windex too. I think we'll hit both the tanks with the Windex. All right, let me go get the hose out of this tank. All right, calm down, everybody. It's just a hose. All right, we'll get that tank topped off. Yes, that's the Anubias that rolled into the corner. It should have been tied to that piece of wood, but I've done that 3 times now, and it keeps coming off. I think the fish tug on it, and it just slides off the piece of wood there. Man, you got to wipe this off quick because it soaks through the glass and toxifies your fish if you don't hurry. I am, of course, kidding. I hope nobody believes that, but you never know. I got to make sure everybody understands I'm joking when I say dumb shit like that. I hear much dumber shit than that being said by people who believe it every day. So no, Windex being sprayed on the tank of your, the glass of your aquarium does not hurt your fish in any way, shape, or form. All right. Just about done filling, and then we will throw the hose in the pond, and then I'll get the filter intake cleaned, and then we'll be able to move this on. Now I think we can call that good. So I'll just toss that in the goldfish pond. Down here. Oh, this filter intake actually wasn't as bad as I thought. It was still blowing bubbles, so I'm not sure what was going on with that. Maybe it was just the water level being so low. It was sucking water through a gap in the tube or something. One of the seams. But if I give the filter a shake, it should blow some bubbles out of there for us. A few, not many. All right, well, at least we got the glass wiped down and the outside of it nice and clean. So we're going to continue filling the pond. We'll have a quick look at the 29. Not much left in this tank. I really need to go to the PetSmart or something and just get some filler type fish, some pretty tetras or something in these tanks. I just don't have any money. I'm so broke, and I keep spending money on, things that I think are more important, like, mushroom spores and things like that. Speaking of mushroom spores, I bought some more yesterday. I'm pretty sure the spores I killed. I inoculated it over 2 weeks ago. I've got no growth from that. I actually put a bunch more spores into it 4 days ago, and I'm still not even seeing like the tiniest trace of mycelial growth in the bag. And so I looked into it yesterday about whether I should have refrigerated my spores, and apparently I should have. If the spores are going to be stored for anything longer than 1 to 3 weeks, you should store them in the refrigerator. And even if you're going to store them for 1 to 3 weeks, you should store them in a cool, dry place. And of course, I kept my spores in my vegging room, you know, in my weed garden, and that vegging room is about 85 to 87 degrees round the clock. And so that's where I stored my spores for about 3 months. And so I'm pretty sure I ruined my batch of spores. And so yesterday I ordered a new batch and I got a different strain of mushrooms. I got a strain called Jedi Mindfuck. Apparently they're really strong and they grow big, fat, huge mushrooms. They were first discovered by a mycologist in the early 2000s in Georgia. He found a particular strain that grows in Georgia, and he cultivated it and fine-tuned it into what he wanted it, named it Jedi Mindfuck, and that's what I ordered. So it'll be a while before, obviously, I got to get the spores, I got to inoculate the bag, and then it's a month or 6 week process to actually get the mushrooms from it. But I have ordered fresh spores, and I do believe I killed my old spores. But I still got. I looks like I have one more mushroom. Somehow it looks like I'm going to get one more mushroom out of that bag. And currently, even if I don't, what I've got right now so far, I added up all the batches. I've gotten 4 flushes out of it, and I converted the grams to ounces, and I got 2.998 ounces. So I think we can safely call that 3 ounces. So that was a pretty good deal for my money. The mushroom dispensary in DC sells mushrooms for $50 an eighth. So if I had bought the same 3 ounces an eighth at a time, it would have been $1,200 worth of mushrooms that I paid less than $100 for the whole grow kit and everything. So I think that's a pretty sweet deal. And I don't think I'm done. I think I'm going to get at least one more mushroom off of that bag. It's just amazing how many mushrooms have grown out of that thing. All right, not a lot going on in this tank, so we're not going to look at it very long. This is the tank that's just kind of waiting to have something done with it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. But if you look here, I'm probably going to have to start trimming that Anubias pretty soon because that's getting, up and out of control. Of course, now the discus are probably even more freaked out from me making all that noise and banging on the lid and everything. So anyway, that's what the tank looks like. There's a couple of discus in here. They're really shy. They keep hiding, so we're not going to even spend a lot of time looking at that. Still have not seen Gilgalad in quite a long time in this tank. Let's get that power head plugged back in on the discus tank. That's what that plug was for, and we'll get the filter flowing on the discus tank again. All right, now we're officially done with my water change. Everything is up and flowing. So I haven't seen Gilgalad, my betta fish, in this tank in a couple of weeks now, I want to say, over a week at least. And so I don't think he's in there anymore, and I think it's safe for me to be able to go out and buy another new betta fish for this tank. So all that's in there is a bloated guppy that's on its way out. It's been in there for years, and shrimp. So let me get those shrimp lollipops, and I'll stick one of them in the tank below. We'll give that a few minutes, and when the shrimp start getting on it, we'll get a better look at it. So it's just a little stick with shrimp flavored food on it. It looks like a incense almost. All right, that shouldn't take too long for the shrimp to work their way onto it. Well, there's already shrimp on it. Look at that. Look how fast that shrimp got on there. So we'll give that a few minutes, and it probably will be completely covered in shrimp. And we'll check that out. I also harvested my Super Silver Haze yesterday, so I'll show you what I got from that. It's hanging up drying right now. I'm not going to show you all of it. Well, actually, I can show you all of it. It'll be easy enough. But I'll bring in the cola, that big top bud section. I'll show you what I got from that. It's pretty good looking. It's been a long time since I've actually had good quality dank bud. I struggled for so long with my soil, and I was making my soil too rich. When I finally figured that out after like a year and a half of struggling, I ran straight into a bug problem with mites, and I struggled with that for like another 9 months until I finally wiped everything out. Basically, did a hard reset, and I got on top of the mites, and so now I'm actually finally, after like 3 fucking years of telling people like I really can grow really good weed, believe me, I actually finally am again. So yay, I'm happy about that. All right, we still have one lonely shrimp on that shrimp lolly down there. All right, let me see where I was. Holy crap, I got so much reading to catch up to do here. All right. Ginger, hello. Exactly. All chemicals are toxic. Yeah, exactly, Ginger. That's an excellent point. Remember, arsenic is natural. Cyanide is natural. Dog shit is natural. I'm thinking about getting some neons, Michael, but the neons, if I do get neons, I'm going to put them in my 55 with all of the diamond tetras and all of the crypt. I think neons would look absolutely amazing in that name. Mike, how are you doing? I went to Sporeworks. If you're wondering about my mushrooms, I did go to the Sporeworks website. I stuck with the cubensis species, which is a dung loving, they're fairly adaptable. They don't need really precise, environmental conditions. And, the bag of mushroom material, the substrate I got was sort of designed for dung loving mushrooms. So I stayed in that, the cubensis species, but I got a strain called Jedi Mindfuck. If you missed it. I haven't done any adulting yet, Laura. I don't see why I should start now. What size is that tank? Not sure which tank you were asking about, but we recently looked at the 20, the 40, the 29, and then the Grammy tank is the 55. CD, thank you. 3G got a membership. Nice. There were 3G left because I asked people to contribute and comment. So they rolled out and haven't seen them since. I don't know if we will. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Gilgalad is no longer with us. I haven't seen him in quite a while now. I try, Zini. I try picking them off one at a time, although the YouTube channel lets me pick them off at, I can corrupt people at multiple rates. And I'm still reading. You're not kidding, Ginger. Those fucking spider mice. I've had white flies before. They were fairly easy. I get thrips pretty commonly. I don't really have much of an issue with thrips. Even a plant that has thrips on it will still do okay unless they just become completely out of control. And they never really do. The thrips almost seem to be like self-regulating. I had white flies once, and I never had much of an issue with that. I just sprayed everything, and it killed them off. I think I used like 7 spray or something, um, maybe a pyrethrin spray or something. And those mites, just I could not get on top of those mites. I tried and tried and tried. Chem Dog. I've never actually had Chem Dog. I wish they were $1.49. They used to be like $3, and then they would go on the $1 a piece sale twice a year at PetSmart, and then they stopped doing that. And so I think at my PetSmart, the neons are like $3.50. If they were $1.50 a piece, I'd go buy a bunch of them. And whenever I bought that's why I don't mind buying them at PetSmart. Whenever I buy neons, I figure I'm going to have about a 60% survival rate within my first week. Don't know why. I just always do. Like when I buy neons, they just tend to die off fairly quickly. That's why I quarantine them. First of all, neons are usually little fucking disease vectors. You always want to quarantine neons. And secondly, put them in a small enough tank so that when they die off, you can collect them up and put them in the freezer. And then, at the end of your 2 weeks before you run out of your warranty, you take all the dead ones back and get your money back for them. That's what I do. I was actually just going to point it out. I just saw a shrimp. I don't know if anybody else noticed it. It was up here. I thought at first it was a shrimp, and then it began drifting towards the power head. So I thought it was a little bit of broken leaf or something. And then it swam away from the power head in the wrong direction. So I know it was a shrimp. Yeah, the spraying with the rubbing alcohol, the 70% isopropyl, and I make my own because I actually buy 99.9%, for my extractions when I'm making hash oil and stuff. So I water that down. I've got a bottle that I've measured, 70%. I fill it up to the line, then I top it off with water and shake it up really well. And that's what I use to spray my plants now. And if it's thrips or white flies or anything like that, the rubbing alcohol will kill them pretty quickly. It did not impact the mites. And the reason is, first of all, the mites are pretty tough, and it's, not just going to kill them the way it would kill a soft-bodied insect like the thrip. But also, the moment a mite is born, they are born loaded with eggs. It's not technically pregnant, but you can think of it as they're born pregnant. And the moment they start walking around, they start dropping eggs. Look, you see the little shrimp right there in the front? I don't know if you saw that or not. There's a little yellow shrimp. The other one I saw was like clearish color, and that one was yellow. So we know there's at least 2 shrimp still in this tank. And so the eggs are impervious to the alcohol. And so what I was having to do was just every day go in and spray the plants down again and again and again. And that started damaging the plants. They can take an occasional spray with the rubbing alcohol, but spraying them twice a day or every single day is just too much. Nothing that I know of kills the eggs. So anything you're doing to try to get on top of the mites, you constantly have to do it for like every day for like 3 weeks straight to make sure you've killed off all the eggs. And I was never able to get them out of there. I wiped it all the way down to like 1 plant left, and then started making cuttings and growing back. And within weeks, I had mites all over all the plants again. Like I literally had to just shut it all down, spray everything, leave the tents dormant for a couple of weeks. If they don't have any plants to live on for about a week, they will die. And so I just starved them. I literally just shut my shit down for 2 weeks and then planted some seeds and got things going again. And that was the only way I was able to get on top of those mites. Fucking bastards. Iceman! We're starting to get, especially speaking of shrimp. Yeah, that was definitely a shrimp I saw. I thought it was a detritus at first, but it was definitely a shrimp. Gold gourami in a 30-gallon tank, you're probably pushing it, but I would say okay, but I definitely wouldn't go any smaller than that. Any of the 3-spot color morphs, the golds, the opalines, the lavenders, all of those get 5 to 6 inches. I don't know what that is, Ginger. I'm assuming some kind of like bacterial. Yeah, I was definitely limited on what I could spray it on too. I got to smoke that stuff or do something with it. All right, I have no idea. You'd have to check what the pet store keeps their fish at. I don't know those kind of details. Oh yeah, Fish Tropic. It's like saying like I have a chipmunk in my yard. No, you don't. If you're seeing a chipmunk, you've got a lot of fucking chipmunks, or I have a cockroach. Like, no, you don't. You don't see a cockroach unless you've got cockroaches. But I use a microscope. If the first sight of a spot on a leaf, and I've got a microscope looking at it, so I can see all their little eggs. I can see their juvenile state. I can see their adult state. I know exactly what mites look like, believe me. Don't know what to tell you about the gold gouramis that I haven't said already, Michael. They're one of the 3-spot color morphs. They can be aggressive. They get about 6 inches long. They're pretty fish, but I wouldn't try to keep them in a. I won't say don't keep them in a community tank. Like, I don't know if you can see it or not, but see this one down here? That's the little bullied fish. He's out of his hiding place, but look how he just keeps getting bullied. So I really do need to get this fish just out of this tank and switch them back. Well, the tiny black flying things are generally referred to as gnats, but they are a type of fly, believe it or not. They're usually referred to as soil gnats. They're not problematic unless you have them like swarming all over the place. Their larval state is in the soil, and they will damage the roots a little tiny bit. But again, I've had them to the point where they were just like flying around, and they never bothered the plants. They just bothered me, having fucking bugs all over the place. So soil gnats generally aren't a real issue, but the surest way to get soil gnats is overwatering. And the easiest way to get rid of soil gnats is to water properly. If you allow the top layer of your soil for about 1 inch deep to get dry before you water again, your soil gnats will just magically go away. It's only when you keep the substrate in your planter, no matter what you're growing, any kind of planter that's got substrate in it, if you keep that moist all the time, they will thrive in that. And so if you just let it dry out to about 1 inch deep between waterings, you are good to go. Those soil gnats will just sort of start dying off. Can you see it? There's a little orange shrimp back there on the on the Java. And of course, he just made his way down into the Java at this point. But I do still have shrimp in this tank. That's fairly obvious. All right, I'm going to take a breath and sit down. I feel like I haven't stopped talking since we started the live stream. That is the one good thing about mushrooms is I can just let my brain do whatever it wants and my mouth runs on autopilot and I can just talk. So if I remember, I'll check in on that periodically. It's already got one snail that's made its way up the shaft there and is now onto the food section. All right, well, I got you in my hand here. So this isn't all of what I got. I already smoked one branch, and these little buds I'm trying to dry out. That's my little heater, and you can see I got the vent curl blowing this way, and so I'm trying to just rapidly dry these so I have something to grind up to make joints out of it. It won't be cured, but as long as it's dry, I can smoke it, and it'll be better than nothing. And then so this is the rest of what I'm actually drying right now. And then this one here, this is the cola. This was the one from the tip. So not too shabby. I'm finally growing real bud that actually looks like bud you'd want to smoke. When it was still on the plan, it was the kind of bud you'd want to see pictures of in the centerfold of a High Times magazine, and it's super silver haze, so I'm really excited about that. I'm debating on whether or not I want to eat any more mushrooms tonight. I already ate 0.9 grams before we got started, and I don't know if I want to do a little more than that or not. Do I? I was going to say it is Saturday night, but it's not. It's Sunday night. But I don't have anything to do tomorrow, so it doesn't really matter. All right, let's get that wiped down with the deadly poisonous Windex as well. Well, I still got the Windex sitting here. People often ask me about like the smoke and does the smoke get into the fish tanks, or if you see me blow, whether I'm vaping or whether I'm smoking. And I get that question a lot, and the answer is no. The stuff's not water soluble. I guess with the vaping that might be, I don't know, but that's not anything that I'm worried about. But as far as the THC and all that kind of stuff, that stuff's not water soluble, so it can't get into your fish tank, whether you wanted it to or not. As far as the outside of the fish tank, however, smoking and vaping and all that stuff, it still does condense on the glass, and over time your glass will start to get grungy. You ever been in one of those houses where somebody smoked in it for 40 years and the walls are yellow? They take a picture down off the wall and like, holy shit, that's what the color used to look like. It's white. So that does accumulate. All right. And of course, I forgot to bring a lighter with me. So we'll get up and get that before we settle in, because I do have a joint I want to smoke. And I guess I will pass on the more mushrooms. It's already 9 o'clock. It would be 9:30 or something before I was even taking it. And I'll probably be asleep by midnight, so that'd be kind of a waste of one of my last few mushrooms. All right, let me see where it was. Sparkling. Yeah, sparkling gouramis only get about that big, about 1.5 inches. That's true, Ginger, and I do have I call it my desktop. I do actually have a dry herb vaporizer, and that's the only thing I ever used it for, was when I had fresh cut weed that wasn't cured yet, but I didn't want to, rapid dry it and smoke it, because you still taste all that chlorophyll and all that shit in there. But if you vape it in a dry herb vaporizer, you don't even have to dry it out. I can literally take fresh cut weed that's still moist and put it in my dry herb vaporizer, and just the heat coming over it dries it and vaporizes it at the same time, and you get a really amazing flavor. Well, you get a really amazing flavor for about the first 2 or 3 hits, and then it starts tasting like burnt popcorn, and then it tastes like ass. So I use limited use on my dry herb vaporizer there, but I do have one. Giant gourami, I'm not sure how big giant gourami get. I think the giant gourami get something like that. I know there's a type of gourami that gets about 3 feet, because I've seen one of those. But I think the giant gourami, well, let's find out. Computer, how big does the giant gourami get?
From Heifer.com. The largest gourami species is the giant gourami, which grows up to 28 inches, although most don't exceed 18 inches. If you'd like, I can kickstart your brain in the morning with amazing facts and news. Would you like to enable this routine?
All right, so the giant gourami, maybe it's the kissing gourami is the one I'm thinking of. I think I'm going to have some of this. So we'll take this and we will break that piece of stem off. Actually, let's break the whole stem off. Put the cap back in there for later and we'll just eat the stem tonight. Although I'm not going to actually eat the stem. I'm going to make tea out of it. So let me get started on that because it takes about 20 minutes of soaking time. Bear with me here, everybody. I got to grind it up first. Oh, shit, I got to go upstairs and get my lemon juice, too. So I put the mushroom in my coffee grinder. And I used water to rinse out my coffee grinder. Well, I don't think you're supposed to get them wet, and that's why it makes that horrible squealing noise. I think it's got rust on the blade shaft or something. All right, so that is what the mushroom now looks like. So let me go upstairs and put some little bit of lemon juice in that. We'll top it off with some water. And in about 20 minutes, I will drink some more mushroom juice. My wife left a bag of catnip on the floor. The cats are all laying in a big pile around it. All right, lemon juice has been added. I'm going to top it off with a little bit of water. And now let it sit for about 20 minutes. All right, so that's all the water you need to mix it with. We'll let that sit for about 20 minutes and we'll strain it out through a coffee filter. I will add a little bit of blue raspberry flavoring, and it's got electrolytes because that's what plants crave. And I will have myself a nice little glass of mushroom tea. Because why not? And we are still waiting for my dragon tongue back here. You can't really see it, but we're still waiting for that to kind of stand up a little bit. It should. It's got plenty of water in it. In fact, it's got so much water that there's water in the reservoir at the bottom. So it weighs a ton. So we'll just give that a few minutes. And it will actually drink that water up and stand back up and won't be so wilty in a few minutes. All right, while we let my tea soak, I'm gonna light a joint. All right, let's see where it was this time. There was a gourami down at House of Tropicals named Tiny Twanda, and she died several years ago, but she was over 30 years old, and she was that big. I mean, she looked like she was 3 feet from lip to tail. I'm assuming she was a giant gourami. And I mean, she was that thick in the middle. She was 8 inches wide, but she had to have been at least 27 to 30 inches. I mean, she was absolutely massive. When you walked in the door, she was in a huge, like 500-gallon tank right next to the door as you walked in. She was the first thing you saw. And they had a plaque it was just handwritten on cardboard, but it told you what her name was, how old she was, what kind of fish. Asked her not to do flash photography or tap on the glass and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, she was gigantic. And I didn't realize she was a giant gourami. I thought the giant gourami was like one that got like 8 inches or something. And she was, a different species or whatever. But she must have been the giant gourami because She was big. She was huge. She was definitely thick. All right, everybody, what do you want to talk about? I'm sure I could come up with some Doctor Who related stuff. We can't do the music tonight because I wasn't listening to music tonight. I was actually watching Doctor Who before we went live. Oh, right, Zini. Thank you. Let's go talk about my aquarium hose. Let me find a way to put this joint out first. Actually, I'll just set it there. It'll go out all by itself. So Zini was complaining that his Python hose, I'm just going to call it a Python. Again, remember mine is a Vevor. Now, in my case, I just leave a pile of coiled, it lives on the floor like this, but I just keep a big pile of the excess coiled up there. So it's long enough that it can reach anywhere in my fish room. But if you want it shorter, you can cut the hose to length. If you actually unscrew this, you will find that this slides back, and then there's a collar that goes over the hose. You pull the collar back, and then you'll see that the hose is just sort of wedged over a nipple that has ridges on it. So what you do is you slide this, make sure that the collar and the thread is on the hose, slide it back down out of your way, cut the hose to whatever length you want, and then you just slide it back over the nipple, you slide the collar up, and then you slide this on and screw it tight, and that seals it down. This white stuff here is actually, I put crazy glue on there and a piece of paper towel for the fibers of the paper towel to sort of lock it in place, because the collar cracked and the hose kept falling out, and that crazy glue was my fix. Likewise, if you need to do an adjustment on this end, you can take this little bottom section here, you can unscrew this, slide it down, and likewise you'll see that the hose is just slid over a nipple that's got ridges in it. You can cut it to length on this end too, but remember, you want the collar down on the hose somewhere, so when you put it on, you can slide it back up and tighten it down. So you can adjust it from either end. And as far as like the blackness and the grunge and stuff growing in the hose, that doesn't hurt anything. So if you've got one of those hoses that over the years has gotten black on the inside, I've heard a lot of people express concern about that over the years, not knowing what it is. Is it harmful? It's just bio-growth. It doesn't hurt any damn thing. As I had one viewer point out at one time, that if the hoses were opaque, like they were black hoses and you couldn't see that, it would look exactly the same on the inside. You'd just never think about it, and you'd just use it forever without ever thinking about it. So just pretend you can't see it and ignore it. It's not hurting anything. And my joint didn't even go out. It's a miracle. I don't know anything about the sparkling gourami. I've never kept them. I just know they're really small. And it also depends on the gourami. I believe the chocolate gourami and the sparkling gourami prefer a lower pH. Most gouramis, however, can live in a normal range that most, generalized fish can, anywhere from 5.5 to maybe 8.5 or something like that. I would think gouramis would be okay. Did that give you everything you needed to know, Zini? It's pretty basic stuff. If you just unscrew that screw, you'll see how it's put together. It's not complicated. Oh, you're welcome, Zini. All right, now what does anybody want to talk about? I did get a new Doctor Who episode last night, and I started watching it, but I remember it, and I was never really that into it. It's the Sylvester McCoy years. It's in the last couple years before the show ended on its original run, and I don't know. It's trying too hard to have too many plot twists and connections and sinister, ulterior motives, and I got to be in the right mood to watch something I got to think that fucking hard about, especially a Doctor Who episode. I should be able to just kind of like watch along. So I haven't finished that one yet. Oh, and I did try listening to Adam Hart Mother. I don't know if whoever was talking about that the other night is still with us. But I had talked about the Pink Floyd album that I haven't listened to in like years. And I kind of remember why I haven't listened to it in years. It was okay for about the first 3/4 of it. I wasn't digging it necessarily, but it was all right. It was listenable. A lot of, I don't even know how to describe it. Anyway, it was listenable. And we got to that point where, like, in all that old shit, they start doing the stuff like Pink Floyd does a lot of transitions between songs where it sounds chaotic and dissonant chords being played and stuff like that. It's like a weird way to reset your brain for the next song. Pink Floyd's genius with stuff like that. But at some point, like, my brain realizes, like, this isn't the transition. This is just what you've been listening to for the last 5 minutes. And like, I always get to a point where my brain just kind of slaps me and says, dude, what the fuck are you listening to? This isn't even music. And at that point, I stopped listening. So I got 3/4 of the way through Adam Hart Mother before I got to that point. So there might be better stuff past that, but I saw how far into it I was. I was like, you know what? I'm just going back to Dark Side, and I listened to Dark Side again. But I did try. And when I was looking up, I have a theory about Pink Floyd and the progression of their albums. I'm not going to go into it now, but as I was looking up the order of their albums to see if that lended any credence, no pun intended, to my hypothesis, I saw an album on there that I've never seen before. I've never even heard of it. It was their third album. It was Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Saucer Full of Secrets, and then this album I've never heard of before. And I've been like a huge Pink Floyd fan for fucking ever. And I've never heard of this album. I think it was called like More or something like that. It was just a one-word title. I have no idea what that is. I've never even heard of it before. So I'm interested to check that one out. But as early as it is, I also know it's going to be a lot of experimental shit. And I'm just looking for the nuggets that I can take out of it and see what it's all about. I have no idea what it even is. All right. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go look it up because I want to see what the name of that was. All right. Yeah, Piper at the Gates of Dawn was 67, Saucer Full of Secrets was 68, and then in 69, nice, was More. Then came Ummagumma, Adam Hart Mother, Metal, Obscured by Clouds, and I always suspected that Obscured by Clouds came right before Dark Side, and it did. Obscured by Clouds was 72, and then Dark Side was 73. So that confirmed my hypothesis. But I've never heard of the album called More before, and so I'm definitely going to have to check that out, give that a listen. All right, we got a few more minutes to wait before my mushroom tea is done. Heart, the band. Oh, Eugene, that was you. Okay. Yeah, like I said, it was listenable. The first song is like 23 minutes, and that was okay. It was a lot of real high pitched, female vocals, like all wispy, going up and down. It sounded like very sort of, it was sort of invoking the idea of like goddesses and stuff like that. And it is called Adam Hart Mother, so I assumed it was going to be sort of a feminine themed album. See how much this poor little fish gets bullied around. And so I got a lot of that. I was sort of expecting it to be like that. And that's why I say it was listenable. I went into it expecting it to be sort of, mother themed. And then the song after that was a little more groovy. And I was just starting to think like, all right, I'm digging this. I could groove on this. And then after that, it went into the, my brain just shut down and like, what the fuck are you listening to? So I'm guessing it's either the very last song that I didn't listen to, or it was that second song. There's only 4 or 5 songs in the whole album. So I could see that have making a radio play at some point. Have I ever heard of Heart? Of course I've heard of Heart. Not a big fan of Heart, but they're all right. I went through a big Beatles kick when I was younger. And I do still enjoy the Beatles in a certain way, but I'm not a huge Beatles fan. Can anybody guess what my favorite Beatles song is? I've said it before, but it's been a long time. I doubt anybody here would ever have heard me say it or would possibly remember. Let's see if you can guess what my favorite Beatles song is. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go get my glass. I think my mushroom tea is about ready. See how the water's all nice and sort of cloudy and creamy looking? That's what you want it to look like. So I need to get something to pour that into, and I need to get something to pour it through. All right. Like all the various noises my cabinets make when I open them. I've got a wind chime on the cabinet where my glasses are kept, so every time you open or close the cabinet door, you hear the wind chimes tinkling. It's actually a broken set of wind chimes. We brought them in from outside because they didn't work anymore, but when they hang on the door, they swing enough that they do still jingle. All right, not doing anything really complicated right here, just folding up a coffee filter to put in my other little coffee filter, which goes in my glass. Got to fold the little wings up first. And then I'm going to just pour all that through there. I'm going to go rinse that stuff out and pour that through there too. So give me a second. I'll be right back. And once it's done dripping through the coffee filter, I always wring it out and I twist it and squeeze all the juice out of the coffee filter. And that way I'm not missing any of the good stuff. All right, that's everything out of the mushroom glass. Now all we got to do is let it drain for a minute or two. And you can see it's retained that sort of cloudy, but it's not blue. That's my shirt if you're looking. It is not blue. It's cloudy but clear. All right, that's the coffee filter out of there. Now, we turn it blue. Not the same blue, though. So much better than eating them. Blech, eating them is gross. I didn't even weigh that. I have no idea how much that was. I'm guessing it was about a gram. That's what I was shooting for. That gave me a nice little ride for a few hours. All right, now what do we want to talk about? All right, Michael, good night. Yeah, that's why I say that poor discus always just hides down here in the crypt because it just gets bullied so much. I was hoping by changing the dynamic, it might be okay. But ideally, what I wanted to do was pull the bullied discus out and put that in a different tank. But when I caught them, or when I caught it, I caught the wrong discus. I scooped it up and I had one. I was like, yay. And I put it in the other tank before I even realized I caught the wrong one. So the bullied discus is still in here and still getting bullied. And I actually broke up my mated pair. This is one half of the what used to be a mated pair. That's why all the other fish hang out down at that end, because these two occupy this end. You know, it was their territory, but she's over there now. And he's still in here. So I need to switch them back around. Nope, not baby. Can you drive my car? Not even close. The most mushrooms I've ever done at once was like a quarter ounce. I wouldn't call that a crazy dose, but I was seeing trails turn into physical rainbows that then fell out of the sky and shattered into liquid color on the ground. So that was a pretty fucking extreme dose of mushrooms. For me, anyway, a quarter ounce is a lot of fucking mushrooms, considering I usually do between 1 and 1.5 grams now. I like just getting that nice, pleasant, right on the edge of feeling like I'm tripping. It's just fun to be there. I haven't had a huge desire to like really trip balls again. One of these days I will, but it'll probably be when the weather's nicer. I'm not going to trip my ass off just sitting down in my dank basement, and I'm sure the fuck not doing it out in the cold ass winter time outside. So probably next spring or whatever, I'll do a good solid trip where I can just fuck off in the yard and look at flowers and shit all day. But yeah, that's I haven't done that in a while. JP, how are you doing? Andrew, hello. You're not going to call me a big, beautiful bastard like Ozzy Man does? I'm not as big as I used to be. I'm actually under 180 now. I weighed myself the other day, like fully clothed, like with my hiking boots on and my phone in my pocket, and I was 181. So I got to be down to like 178 or something like that now. So yay, nicotine. Ever since I started vaping the nicotine, I went from being about the mid 190s to I've lost almost 15 pounds now since I've been taking the nicotine. Yay, nicotine. See, that's not enough to convince people. Somebody named Dan is mentioned in my favorite Beatles song. That's got absolutely nothing to do with why it's my favorite Beatles song, but there is somebody named Dan in my favorite Beatles song. And if you don't get it from that, then you don't know the song. Rocky Raccoon. Exactly. That is my all-time favorite Beatles song is Rocky Raccoon. You know what? We actually are going to do one more thing before the night is over, before my next level of mushrooms kick in, because I still feel functional. When that next wave kicks in, we're definitely not going to be doing any more fucking work. I'm probably not even doing a live stream anymore at that point. But I want to change the filters on that 40 down here, wherever my thumb's working there. That 40 right there. I want to do a water change. I mean, a filter change on that. So let me make myself good. And, God, after all these fucking years, I still try to talk when I have shit in my lungs. I got to stop doing that. Let me make myself good and dizzy first, and then we'll go try to do a filter change on that. This is just nicotine, but it's pretty potent. And several big puffs of it will definitely make me feel dizzy for a few minutes. Like right now, for example. All right, I need 3 pieces of filter pad material. So let me get my handy dandy scissors. I already got the material line here. And that should be good. Get something to, oh, I've already got something there that I can put the old filters in. Man, tell you what, that fucking nicotine whacks my clock harder than the weed does. I can do bong hits and just smooth my way right through it without flinching, with the exception of all the coughing I do. But the buzz, like this, I can smoke unlimited weed without ever really having it affect me. I do a couple of big, powerful hits of nicotine, and I'm fucking busy for 5 minutes. All right. I've already got a container back here that's got the old filters from the last time I did this. So the bio pads are still okay. We're just going to get the old filter pads off and swap these out real quick. So if you're not familiar with how I do this, I've been over this a bajillion times, but if you are new, just joining us, I take a roll of polyester batting that you can get at the Walmart sewing section. I just cut it into squares that are the appropriate size. I don't worry about going all the way around it as long as it gets around the front and I can clip it down. The back still stays open, but that doesn't matter because it's got that front side on there. So when you're installing it, if you've still got the biofilter in there, you don't want to just slide it straight in. The socks are okay to do that, but when it's open at the bottom, you've got to lift the biofilter up and then slide them in either simultaneously or put the filter in first and then slide the biofilter back in. When you have the sock, it's fine because it's on the bottom and it can't bunch up. Whereas the way I do it, it's just hanging there. And if you try to push it down across that biofilter, it bunches the filter up and the water just flows underneath of it. And it's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing. So always keep that in mind if you do it the way I recommend. Not that you wouldn't figure that out soon enough on your own, as I did. I cut these actually pretty big. They go almost all the way around it. See, this is the one real benefit I can see of the hang on the back filters. You do have to change the filters a lot more frequently than you do with a canister filter, but it's really easy. You don't even need to do water. You know, it's not even like something you got to do during water changes. You can just slap a few filters on there in a couple of minutes and call it good when they're starting to get a little bit clogged up. All right, now that one I was able to just slide in there because it hung far enough down past the bottom that I folded it over. And that way, when I pushed it down, it wasn't able to bunch back up. So just always remember that when it's open on the bottom like that, you got to be careful how you put it in there, or you could basically make the filter useless. All right, that was something to do. Oh, watch your head. I forgot I got the camera extended way up. I'm trying to lift you over all this stuff and banging your head against the ceiling. Need to lower you down a little more. All right. Let me actually lower you down a little more. It's a little ridiculously high. All right. I'm coming back. All right, I don't know what to do to please you people. I lost 7 people while I was talking about Pink Floyd. So I built people back up and I decided, hey, let's do some aquarium work. That'll keep people interested. And I lost the same amount of people while I was doing a filter change as I did while I was talking about Pink Floyd. So that just reinforces my idea of I should just do whatever I want. I'm going to lose viewers no matter what I'm doing. I may as well just have fun. Yeah, Come Together is all right. Like I said, I like the Beatles. I'm one of those people that does not think that the White Album is Beatles' best album. I think Sgt. Pepper's is by far the Beatles' best album. I loved all of the, that made up controversy over whether or not Paul McCartney had died and they replaced him and all that stuff. That was fucking awesome. I heard about that in the 80s. I still, to this day, I don't know whether they did that deliberately as like an elaborate hoax or if they just made an awesome album. And then, you know how conspiracy theorists are. They find, mysterious shit in everything, especially when it's not there. And so did they come up with it? Because if they did, there's an awful lot of hints and clues and stuff like that in the album, which is what obviously makes the whole entire thing nonsense. If they were going to cover up his death and subsequent replacement, why would they then tell you all about it with hints and clues in the fucking album? They would have just done a cool Beatles album and pretended like everything was normal. So it's obviously not true. But it was a fun thing when I was a kid. And again, there's just so many things in Sgt. Pepper's that are just so weird and kind of line up with the whole idea that Paul really did die at one point. So I still don't know if they did that on purpose. Yeah, the Beatles, and it's not the Beatles like the bug, it's the Beatles like a beat in music, Beatles. It's a play on words. Yeah, they kind of fell out of favorability a while ago. They're still one of those classic bands that if you're like an old dude, you're familiar with them, but everybody else is kind of, I don't know. I don't think the Beatles are still that popular anymore out of a lot of the old bands. Elvis was another one. I went through a big Elvis kick when I was younger. I've actually technically sort of been to an Elvis concert. My mother was about like 3 weeks from delivering me when she went to the Elvis concert. And my grandmother apparently was just sweating bullets thinking my mom was going to get all hysterical during the Elvis concert and go into labor and have me right there at the Elvis concert. She obviously didn't. But I was in there, so technically sort of, I was kind of been to an Elvis concert. But I went through a big Elvis kick like in my 20s. And I kind of burned out on him now. I'm just like, he's just a dude that stole black people music and made it popular to white people and, just kind of ripped off other people. I didn't realize that then, but I can see how clearly that is now. So, whatever. There's nothing too special about Elvis. Was that a big aha moment for you there, Zini, when you realized it's the Beatles, not the Beatles? All right, Dave, thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed yourself this evening. I will continue to hang out as long as, there's people here wanting to hang out and chat. I don't know how much longer I can just sit and provide entertainment. If you got some topics or, things you want me to talk about, that would be helpful. I say that a lot. I've even driven away viewers by asking people to participate. I still don't get that. But there's a lot of things I don't get. I think there was some other dumb Doctor Who thing I wanted to talk about because it's like a recurring thing I notice in a lot of episodes, like over the decades of Doctor Who, and it's a recurring sort of thing. And I can't remember what it is now. Pretty sure I talked about the thing on Friday about how the soldiers always just stand there and no matter how useless their guns are, they just keep shooting and shooting and shooting until eventually the monster slowly approaches them and finally kills them. They never run away or fall back. I always find that hilarious. All right, everybody, remember the clock is ticking. It's been T minus 10 minutes since I drank that tea. So we got about 20 minutes left before it starts kicking in. And then we'll see how it goes from there. We'll see how much longer I stay live. Is there any other fish tank stuff we can do? We can go look at the silver dollars with the spotlight on them again. See if I can position the camera somewhere that they can chill out. Oh, goddamn, watch your head again. Gotta stop doing that. Now, the tank will look very different when they're not in feeding mode. I know a lot of you have already seen this, but you just watch them hang out. Once they settle down, after I walk away for a few minutes, I'll stand over here. They'll just pack into like a nice little school, and then they'll just hang out facing upstream. Remember, I got a big power head in the back, and it creates a very noticeable clockwise circulation in the tank. So all the fish are basically facing upstream, and they're just hanging out, waiting for food to come by. But they're absolutely gorgeous fish. I love my silver dollars. I've always wanted them, but I was always afraid to get them because every time you read about them, it says they're really super skittish fish, and they're not good to be kept in tanks that have a lot of decor because they can hurt themselves. And so I never got them. Plus, they get big. And when I had the 125 here one day, I just decided to hell with it. I was going to get some, and I'm really glad I did. I accidentally got the two species, as Zini has pointed out. You'll notice some of them are much smaller and have spots on them. Those are the spotted silver dollars. And then the big shiny mothers are the standard paint job model, just a regular old silver dollar. They are, of course, a type of tetra. So they got those little tiny tetra teeth. And they will destroy vegetation. The only vegetation I've got growing in that tank is that huge ass Anubias. They eat shit out of everything else, including pothos plant. And even the Anubias, they've basically removed all the roots, except for what actually eventually goes down into the substrate and is well rooted down in below where they can't get to it. And I'm hoping you can kind of see it drifting away in the very back there, but I'm hoping that Pearl Cichlid, Mr. Fabulous, comes out and makes a presentation. I think it's cool. Flo's out there hanging out. Flo used to be the big fish in that tank. And now, like that huge silver dollar, you can see just showing the stuff there at the top. And that other one that's drifting up now, they're just so massive. They make Flo look small. And then that Geo in the back, Mr. Fabulous, he's as big as Flo now. And he's clearly still growing fast. So she's definitely not going to be the big fish in that tank for very long. Well, I guess she's kind of not already. And then, of course, I've got a foot plus long pleco in there. But Mr. Fabulous is now pretty much as big as Flo. He's back there. He's drifting around. If he comes up and he gets a good twist in the light and you get a nice glint off of his scales, he's amazing looking. Ow, God damn it. Can you all guess what I just did? I donked my head. I do that constantly on that damn thing. I also like how the occasional disco light hits them and they look like police fish. They're flashing red and blue all of a sudden. Yeah, Zini sent me a picture of the blackberry silver dollars, which I had only heard of recently, and I never did find out what they look like. But when Zini sent me the picture of them, they were pretty awesome looking. I don't know, though. I think I would still stick with the ones I've got. They did look vaguely like they were cosplaying as giant Raspora hets, or the pork chop Rasporas. I think technically the hets and the pork chops are different Rasboras. Oh, there's Mr. Fabulous making an appearance. I think technically the hets and the pork chops are different, but I've also heard, and this was long ago, like a decade or more ago, that they were so similar that a lot of people mixed them up and they got sold under the wrong name and they got bred with each other. And so at this point, they're pretty much indistinguishable. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'd heard way back in the day. I've always thought that, you know, some people call them pork chops and then some people call them their more technical name, which is Raspora het. And het is short for heteromorphic or something like that. I can't even think of what it actually is short for. But I always thought Raspora het was the sort of technical name, and then the pork chop was kind of the nickname for him. But again, I don't know. Yeah, the Harlequin Rasboras, they're really similar to the pork chop. Maybe it's the Harlequin versus the pork chop that I'm thinking about, and maybe both of those are Raspora hets. The reason they're called het, which is again short for whatever that, you know, clinical description of it is, it's because they're not shaped like regular Rasporas that are the, you know, cigar shaped type fish. They've got that flattened, you know, laterally compressed body, more like the silver dollars we're looking at. And that's why they're still technically Rasporas, but they have a different shaped body, and so they're Raspora hets. I actually like them a lot. I used to keep them. They're a really good nano fish if you got a small tank and you want a really cool looking, colorful fish that schools and looks like a exotic type fish. Doesn't look like your sort of run of the mill common, you know, tank full of guppies. Those little Raspora hets or pork chops or Harlequins or whatever you want to call them. Those are cool little fish. All right, I feel like I can feel wave 2 starting to gently wash over me. Can you guys see all the way? It's technically on your screen, but you got to look all the way on the far left of your screen. It's 2 huge fat ass nearite snails about 2/3 of the way up on your screen. I'll come down and point to them, but I don't want to scare the fish too much. You can see my hand here on the screen. See me over here waving? Right here is the 2 snails. Yeah, I would imagine tiger barbs would absolutely destroy the little Raspora hets. They're similar enough looking and shape and color. I think they're referred to as conspecifics. Is it conspecifics? Fish that look similar but are a different species is what I'm saying. So, for example, with the rainbow shark, they would attack my Siamese algae eater, not because they thought it was a Siamese algae eater, but kind of because they thought it was a Siamese algae eater. It's shaped enough like one that, you know, I don't care what color you are, you're the wrong fucking shape. Doesn't bother the other fish, but a torpedo shaped fish like that, the sharks will go after. And I would imagine barbs are kind of similar in that nature, where if you've got a similar shape to that, you know, barb shape, that kind of laterally compressed fish, I would imagine they'd be sort of aggressive towards them. Like, you know, skirt tetras would probably be fair game if you put them in with the tiger barbs. I only tried tiger barbs twice. I got the emerald green ones because I thought they were stunning, and they were too aggressive. I took them back, and then years later, I tried again with just regular tiger barbs. I thought they'd look cool, and with the color scheme I had going on in my 40 right off to your right there. And they were aggressive. I had to move fish around, and you know, of course, one of the fish I had to move was an angelfish. I did the the cardinal sin of mixing barbs with an angelfish, but I proved for myself that in that case, when everybody says it, that in case is true. You know, I'm always going on about how just because everybody says something doesn't make it true. Sometimes when everybody says something, it's because it's true. And so I did learn that with the tiger barbs and the angelfish, so I'll never do that again. And the angelfish was fine. It just got nipped on a little bit for a day or two, and then I moved it. I was prepared for that. I was kind of expecting that to happen, but I still wanted to find out. I thought if I've got the tank set up right and there's enough room, maybe everything will be chill. And it was not. The barbs went after that angelfish. I don't know if it was aggression or they feed on the little bits of fin that they nip, but they were definitely nipping its fins and stressing it out. So I've never gotten barbs again since then. That was years ago. I had I guess 7 of them probably. It would have either been 7 or 9 that I would have had in the 40. And it was fairly well planted. It's not quite as lush as it is at the moment. The tank hasn't changed. It's hardscape since I originally set it up 15 years ago. This is the first tank I ever really thought about and laid out and planned out before I started putting shit in it. And the plants have sort of changed over the years. It's gotten much more crypt and less other stuff, but I do have, got the Anubias growing right here. If we look back here, you actually can see this little, oh, you're getting wobbly neck on me. If you see the really small leaf, this is an Anubias, and I don't ever remember trimming this back. This one's been in here forever, and of course I got little bits of Java fern and stuff like that in there, but mostly it is that crypt. Now you can see I got the Java on that. That green sort of frilly stuff I think is Soswastertang, or however you pronounce that. I had stuff growing on that piece of wood and I tore it all off and threw it away years ago, but just like the Java, you can still see coming at it, the roots were so embedded into the wood that it actually grew back eventually. So I don't know if you can tell or not, but all this green that's making its way towards the back there, you can see that's all the crypt roots are trailing under, and that's all crypt that's growing, so that'll all eventually start filling in. And then this, of course, right here is another piece of Anubias. Let me see if I can get a handful of duckweed out of here. We're standing here. It's not getting too overgrown, but it'll be something to do. And it looks really cool. All right. I hate the way duckweed sticks to my arm hair every time I reach into a tank, because sometimes that ability works to your benefit. So we're going to put all of that duckweed into the goldfish ponds. Let's go do that. Hang on, let me tighten your neck up there. You're getting wobbly neck again on me. I love having a pond in my basement, especially one that's full of goldfish and koi and whatnot, because they devour that duckweed, and I grow a lot of that shit. I mean, obviously, it's easy enough to just throw it away in the trash can too, but it's actually not. You see how clean my arm is? If my arm looked like that, to try to throw that into the trash can, I'd still have to go wash my arm off, and I'd have all the duckweed clogging up my sink, and it's just so easy to dunk my arm in the pond, and it's completely clean, and my goldfish are getting a free meal out of it. That'll be gone in an hour. Anyone else slept with duckweed? I'm not sure about that. All right. What else do we want to do? It was in your bed one time. I have definitely found duckweed on me hours after I've been doing stuff. It would be on my arm and I wouldn't realize it. It would eventually sort of dry out and flake off and fall to my pants leg or whatever. I look down and there's some duckweed on my leg that I didn't know how it got there. It took me a minute to piece together. Got a few shrimp hanging out on that. Let's go look at the actual shrimp tank. Again, I don't want to put one of those shrimp lollies in there because the snails absolutely destroy it. But now that the water is clearing up a little bit, if you really look around, you can see that this tank is just filled with shrimp. They're all over the bottom. They're just swimming everywhere. They're crawling all over everything. Look at all them little bastards in there. Can you see all them down on the substrate? Little teeny shrimplet swimming around. But it's also a really cool looking tank. I love this tank. It's tiny, but I've got a really big fat ass rock right here. And the crypts are in there growing like crazy. You wouldn't think, crypts would really work in a 5-gallon tank. And I've also got a really amazing looking piece of wood in there. It's really hard to see, but you can't see it at all, can you? Let's do it like that. How's that? Can you see that better? So it goes all the way down into the far corner, and it's just so much personality in it. It's got all kind of, it's a hollow piece, and then it's got like openings and gaps and stuff all over it. It's a really, really good looking piece of wood. So it's a bunch of stuff packed in a little tiny tank, and it works. It all looks really good. And then, of course, with the shrimp crawling all over everything, there's no fish in there at all. Although now that I'm thinking about it, putting a couple of guppies or something in there might not be a bad idea. That might be pretty cool. Some little tiny nano fish. It would definitely keep the shrimp population in check. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. All right, let's bring you back to your perch. We're down to 15 people, so I am going to start winding down, I think. It's about 10 o'clock now. Nobody seems to have anything on their mind. Are you going to be up for a while, Zini? Did you get plenty of sleep today? Because I'm definitely going to be up for a while. All right. Let us start winding down. So I'm not leaving yet. We will have a little bit of fun party time. Turn some lights out here at 10 o'clock and have the disco light going for a few minutes. Are you still experimenting with your diurnal lifestyle? You can tell I got the fan on tonight, the way the smoke's blowing around. Or the heater, rather. But that's nice warm air blowing in. Hey, TK. So you're like, I can never remember the name of that. Let's see if the computer knows. Computer, what do you call an animal that's active at dusk and dawn?
From Quora.com. Animals that are active primarily at dawn and dusk are called crepuscular.
Crepuscular. I know there's nocturnal and then there's diurnal, but my whole gig is spraying deer repellent, and deer are that, I don't want to say corpuscular because that sounds wrong. Corpuscular? I don't know what she said or it said. But there's another kind of animal that is active in the twilighty times, dusk and dawn. They sleep at the day and they also sleep at night, but in those dimly lit times is when they're active. And that's what deer are, and that's apparently what Zini is. All right, let's turn some lights out. It's 10 o'clock. That's close enough for me. Get some disco ball action happening. Get my tablet just in case somebody comments. I can see it. Now we'll blow some disco ball smoke. There you go. Now you can really see it. All right, everybody. Nobody's going to say anything. I'm going to say good night. So I hope you all had a good time. I know I did. And we got some stuff done tonight too. And so, yay, I've been waiting to do that for a while now. So if you're not a member and you'd like to be, you can join for $2.99 a month. I'll give you my spiel as I'm winding down. I do a members only live stream. If you enjoyed this live stream and like to see another one on Wednesday for members only, you'll get that. And you will also get access to the Discord server. So if you would like to join the Discord community and get private members live streams and that sort of thing, you can join the channel for $2.99 a month. Otherwise, I'm back every Friday and Sunday night for the most part at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So I guess I will see you guys on Wednesday or next Friday. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. And thanks for all the fish. All right. See you, everybody. Good night.